Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process and for authors to learn valuable tips on producing and marketing your audiobooks. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hello, I am Becky Parker Geist, host of Audiobook Connection podcast, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about pricing strategies for your audiobook. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that when you do standard, typical distribution to channels such as Audible or audiobooks.com, etc., the truth is that you don't really have any control over what they choose to sell it for. That is especially true if you distribute through ACX. ACX is very limited. It's only going to get you distribution on Audible and on iTunes. The end. That's it. And they won't even ask you for a suggested retail price. They're just going to decide on their own, completely without any input, what they choose to sell it for. And they can change that price at any time. They have complete control and you have none. When you go through a digital distributor that allows you to suggest a retail price, to put in an MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price, I want to highlight the word suggested, because that is exactly what it is. It is a suggestion from you, and it is not a requirement. Each retail platform is going to make their own decision about what to sell it for. All right, so that's the truth in that landscape. However, there is a platform where you do have control and where this kind of pricing strategy can work in your favor. And it also can work in your favor as you're doing both broad distribution and also direct distribution. So we're going to talk about Amplify audiobooks and how you can strategize your pricing on that platform and in relation to the other platforms when you're already on Amplify. All right, so first of all, let's talk about pre-order and whether that's something that you might want to consider. Here's the cool thing. Pre-order on Amplify it's a different beast in some ways than pre-order on the Amazon platform. There's a lot of different discussion and theories about, and then just also like algorithmic-based information for the question of whether to use pre-order as an option on the Amazon platform through KDP for your print and ebooks. This is different, all right? And the biggest reason that it's different is because of the algorithm itself and how Amazon uses the algorithm in relation to the pre-order option and what happens as those are working together. And Amplify, it's very straightforward. And so you can really think about it much more clearly because you don't have that big unknown or that confusing thing that can change and just mess everything up depending on what they decide to do with it. So pre-order on Amplify. Actually, before I even jump into that, let me talk about pre-order on other audiobook platforms. Some platforms, a few of the audiobook platforms, will consider posting your audiobook as a pre-order. But that means that your audiobook recordings must be completely done. They have to be finished, approved, just as completely as you would if you were ready to launch. They have to already be done before you can request a pre-order. And when you do request a pre-order, you really need to leave at least 2 months of pre-order time in order for them to consider it. And it's a very limited number of platforms that will even consider it. And there's a lot of unknowns in terms of, well, will it be worth it? Where do I even try to market that? How do I market that? I don't advise it as a general rule. I don't see a great advantage. I don't really see any advantage to doing it that way, since you have to have your audiobook complete anyway. All right. Now, that's sort of laying the framework or the groundwork for what we're going to talk about in terms of pricing strategies for your audiobook on Amplify. You can do pre-order on Amplify audiobooks as long as you are in a production agreement with, to get your audiobook done, right? You're not penalized if something goes wrong and your timing is off. That's not a concern that you have to have. The advantages of doing a pre-order on Amplify are that you can start collecting sales for your audiobook while it's in production. So even before you've finished paying for it, potentially, you can be paying off, getting that revenue back, starting to get a return on the first part of your investment. And that can really, really help, right? So there are some different strategies we'll talk about with that pre-order. And so let's start right there. And then we'll move into other components of your launch on Amplify. So with a pre-order, many people would expect that there might be some discounted pricing if they're ordering it in advance before they actually have access to the audio files. And so you can create a pre-order promotional pricing. That's one thing that you could do on Amplify that you can't do anywhere else. And really, as I talk about like what you can do here and what you can do there, essentially in the broad, typical, standard distribution, in other words, putting your audiobook on someone else's audiobook platform, usually through a digital distributor like ACX or Authors Republic or Spotify, or Findaway Voices. Those are the typical paths. And there are others. There are several others, but those are typical paths to get your audiobook onto many different platforms. So in that, you're going to be providing a lot of information, your metadata, and you can suggest a price. But once you submit all of that, you are essentially saying, here's what I'd like you to do in terms of pricing, but I acknowledge that you're going to do whatever you want in terms of pricing. They could make the price higher. They could drop it lower. The tricky thing, and what a lot of people don't realize, is that if Audible decides to give your book away for free as a teaser to get someone to subscribe to their platform, then they're not going to pay you anything because they will say, well, the sales price was $0 because we gave it away. And they have retained that right in their agreement with you, and it's not something that you can negotiate with them. So they're going to do whatever they want with your price. And so we're looking at these ways that you have in the places where you have control. So on Amplify, you might start with that pre-order pricing. And then when your audiobook goes live, then you might end that and bump it up to whatever is going to be your regular retail price. So we'll talk a little bit about what that might be in just a moment. I want to talk about another aspect of a way to utilize this platform in relation to the other platforms like Audible and audiobooks.com, etc. One way is, and I highly recommend this, one way is to launch first on Amplify audiobooks. whether you do that through a pre-order and then maybe another month or so, or 6 months, whatever works for you and your strategy. But then another segment of time where you'll have it on Amplify exclusively and then open it up to the broad distribution. I did this with my audiobook when I launched my latest book, my novel, The Left Turn, Two Lives, Worlds Apart. When I launched that, I did audio first, and I did it on Amplify first. That was my very first place to launch. So that gives you a lot of advantages and control. So you can announce to your following, wherever you're communicating with them on social media, through email newsletters, etc. When you announce your very first launch, you have several points at which you can communicate new information, keep them updated, right? And which is helpful. So you're not just always saying the same thing, right? We want to have new information come to us. So you can announce each different phase as things roll out. So initially, you can announce that, for example, your audiobook is in production. That's a great thing to announce. You can announce once it's been cast, like who the cast is, why you're so excited about that. You can do cover reveals. Oh, here's the audiobook cover. And I am obviously going to be focused primarily on audiobooks. Some of these you can also do for your other formats, but we're going to focus on audio. And then you can announce it being available for pre-order at a special price when it's on Amplify. And then when it goes live, you can announce that it is now available live on Amplify. And then once you've submitted it and you can start for broad distribution, you can watch for when it goes live on certain platforms, like some of the bigger ones like Audible, Barnes & Noble, audiobooks.com. So at that point, an announcement and strategy that would be great is you announce that, and now it is available on, let's say, Audible and these other audiobooks.com. And at the same time that you announce that, it would be smart to run a promotion. So you had your pre-launch promotion, or your pre-order promotion, I should say. Now you can run a different promotion, call it something else, come up with some name. But the reason for running it then is to essentially undercut the pricing on where else it is available. So you can say, okay, it's now available on Audible. You can get it for a credit, or it's selling at retail price is whatever, let's say $24.95. You can get it for a credit, which is typically, most people, depends on their plan, they're paying about $15 a credit. So then if you put yours on promotion so that it's lower, let's say maybe yours is like $12.95, whatever, or maybe lower. So you can reiterate that it's available elsewhere, but they can still save money by getting it on Amplify. And this is a place where you want to educate your followers a little bit. You want to let them know that when they get it on Amplify, it means a lot more to you, because Amplify is a more equitable platform. And so you're going to be more supported through their purchase when they get it on Amplify. You want to let them know all of those things at once. That as a little sort of package promotional moment. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the comparable market pricing for your audiobook and how you might make that decision about, well, what is a comparable price for my audiobook? With audiobooks, they are standardly in the industry sold or priced according to how long the finished audiobook is. So, if a finished audiobook is under an hour long, and many kids' books fit within this category. They would typically sell for about $7. Okay, this is sort of a disclaimer, I suppose, but I want you to know where I'm getting this information. All right. This is pulled from ACX's description of how much they would typically sell it for. And since they do dominate the market, it makes sense for us to look at how they are pricing theirs. All right. So you'll notice as I go through these that there is some overlap, and you can start to see, that your book may land within like a $5 range, depending on which version of the range you're looking at. And that's all fine. These are all just estimates, but it's sort of their pricing guide, if you will. Beyond what they tell us in this guide, they don't give us any information about how else they determine what they're going to sell it for. So this is what we're left with. And then what you might choose to do, for example, is if you have a book that is full cast versus a single narrator, you might think about pricing it a little bit higher in that range. And you don't have to stick to this range. I want to be really clear about that. You do not have to fit your pricing into this ranges that I'm about to tell you. These are simply guidelines, and you'll decide for yourself. And the cool thing is, on Amplify Audiobooks, you get to change your price whenever you want. And you don't have a long delay of like, I'll change my price and then I have to wait 30 days until it actually shows up at that price. None of that. You change it, you hit submit, and it goes live immediately. So you have the ability to use your pricing to learn from what's happening and what's working as you're doing your marketing, and then apply what you're learning to your pricing. Okay, let's go into those numbers. So I mentioned that if your audiobook is under an hour, it's probably going to run about $7. The truth is that every audiobook takes some significant, unless it's AI created, which we highly recommend against using AI. We at Pro Audio Voices are real people. We're real people doing real work and real quality work. So, but it takes effort, it takes labor, and I think people recognize that, and it's appropriate that even a very short children's book, for example, it's in line with reason that they would be that much. Okay? All right. So moving on. So if your audiobook is about 1 to 3 hours, you're probably looking at $7 to about $10. If it's 3 to about 5 hours long, $10 to $20. If it's 5 to 10 hours long, $15 to $25. And that's where you start to first see that, at 5 hours, it could be 20 or it could be 15, So again, you're starting to see that overlap. All right, next one. Same, you're going to have the similar overlap. 10 hours to 20 hours, about $20 to $30. And if it's more than 20 hours long, typically somewhere $25 to $35 for the audiobook. Again, these are guidelines. And so you want to use that and factor in anything else from your budget or anything else that feels appropriate. But these are sort of market standards. All right. Okay. Now, I just want to say one other thing before we take our break. And that is that as you're setting your pricing, remember that you're going to earn way higher percentage of the sale when you sell through Amplify Audiobooks. Typically about 3 to 4 times what you would have earned if you sold the same book at the same price through Audible. And that difference means even if your book is priced a little bit lower, you'll still earn more. Okay, so you can undercut the Audible pricing and still come out ahead considerably. And the other thing to know is that you have that flexibility to change your price as you need to, and that leaving the pricing a little bit on the higher side can be really helpful. Putting it at $100 or something, for a 10-hour book, that's unreasonable. Unlikely that people are going to buy it. So you may not want to price it that high outside the market range. But if you keep it within the reasonable, comparable rates, then, and even keep it, toward the higher side of that, it gives you room for doing promotions and offering discount codes. So we're going to leave it at that for the moment. When we come back, we're going to talk more about discount codes and how you can use those using it through the Amplify Audiobooks platform and how you can use those to leverage your success. Let's just take a short break. We'll come right back. Would you like to earn more from your audiobook sales? If you're an author with an audiobook, you may have noticed that royalties from Audible especially, and other platforms as well, are frankly kinda pathetically low, disappointingly low, and unfairly low considering what it cost you in effort and resources to create it. How is it the retailers are the ones making all the money off your work and investment? As someone who started in the audiobook industry in 1981, I've found it frustrating that authors keep getting shortchanged. The good news is that Pro Audio Voices just launched Amplify Audiobooks, a direct sale audiobook platform for authors that puts you back in the driver's seat. Earn 65% of the gross sales price that you set. Compare that to the percentage of the percentage that retailers give. Run promotions on schedule whenever you want. Create coupon codes. Build community with your customers since you'll know who they are and how to contact them. Work with a caring, responsive, supportive team to help you succeed all along the way. Get help with marketing. Get paid weekly. We're helping audiobook authors who are frustrated by painfully low royalties and the barriers that prevent them from managing their own products and customers. Amplify Audiobooks is a direct sale platform that enables authors to earn much higher royalties and have way more control. We're disrupting the audiobook industry by putting authors first. Get started today at proaudiovoices.app or go to proaudiovoices.com and click on the Distribution Amplify link. Join the movement. All right, let's talk about discount codes. You may be aware that you can sometimes get free codes from platforms like audiobooks.com. ACX has kept changing their rules about free codes. They used to be much more generous than they are now. And I think they figured out that maybe people were, they were maybe giving away more than they needed to, and they're very bottom line driven. So, discount codes. When you get your free discount codes, let's say from audiobooks.com, well, that's cool. That can be useful. But the challenge is, if you want to give something other than giving it away entirely for free, let's say you'd really like to be able to offer 20% off or 40% off or half off. You can't do that anywhere else. So that's where you need, Amplify Audiobooks to help you be able to do that kind of strategy. So some ways that you can use discount codes are so it's a little different from the running of promotional pricing. Promotional pricing is like, if you're going to do that, you're going to put it on a schedule and say, well, this week, for this holiday, it's going to be this price. It's going to put it on sale for everybody who shows up. A discount code is different. That's where you're offering a discount of some amount, anything from like 1% off to 100% off. But you're offering that to a specific group of people. in this case, just as an example, it could be when you go and present. So you're speaking in front of a room and you offer a discount code to anyone who has attended. It could be when you're a guest on a podcast, you offer a discount code to all the people who are listening to the podcast. Let's say you're a member of some group, could be a writer's group, could be a group that is specific to the content that you have written about. Maybe it's a story about special needs children, and there's a group of parents of special needs children, and this would be a great group to be able to offer a discount code to. So then you can decide what those amounts of discount will be, and you'll also be able to track when people use that code. You'll be able to know what you did that was working. For example, let's just talk about being a guest on a podcast. You could use one code and be a guest on 5 podcasts and use the same code for that podcast, for each of those podcasts. That's one way to do it. You're limiting your information a little bit because you're only going to know, oh, being on a podcast is working this well. I've sold this many audiobooks as a result of being on podcasts in general, right? Whereas if you create a special code for each podcast, you're going to better know which podcast audience was the best one for you, because you'll be able to see how many used it from this podcast, how many from that one. And so you can better track that information. So that's what I would recommend, because the more information you have about what's working, the more you can do to make it work even better. So if you find, let's say you do 5 podcasts and you find that one of them, lots of the people bought your audiobook as a result, you might want to stay in touch with that podcast host, which is a good idea anyway, in general, when you've been on a podcast. But you can also might want to see if you can circle back and be on their podcast again, because obviously you and their audience had a connection that worked really well. So that's good for their audience. It's good for the host. It's good for you. But you're only going to know that if you have this information tracked. Okay, here's another way to use discount codes. If there is a charity that you have some connection with or that you reach out to because you feel like their membership is, or their following is a really good fit with your content, you could offer to the charity that if they would be willing to send out to their list information about your audiobook, that you will provide for them, for their followers, a discount, let's say of 10%, and that maybe another 20% you will contribute back to their organization. That lets the listener know, or the potential listener, the one who's the follower of that organization, know that you're not only giving them a personal benefit, but you're also giving a benefit to the organization that they are already supporting in some way, even if it's just with their attention, right? Even if they haven't given financially. But knowing that them purchasing your audiobook is then going to give a contribution financially to the organization, that's an extra draw for them, an extra benefit. So they get the 10% off and they get the benefit of knowing money has gone to the organization. You might ask, well, how do I make that work from, the financial piece of that? Here's the way that works. When you give them a specific code, in your reporting, you're going to be able to see how many people used that code. And that is what's going to tell you, so you'll know who used it and what the cost was. Then you'll use that to then send your contribution to the organization. You see how that works? So it's about, in this case, being specific about the codes that you use, finding the best places to use them, And then using both the specific code, so differentiating between the different codes that or opportunities or placements, whatever, so that you are able to use your reporting to track that information. Okay, so we have gone over different strategies with pricing your audiobooks. Everything from what's happening out there in the broader landscape and, frankly, the lack of control that you have, and also ways that you can strategize your pre-order on Amplify audiobooks, your launching first on Amplify audiobooks, and then also the promotions and the discount codes to be able to do that when you have launched your audiobook. You can also continue, and I recommend this, continue through the year, find the moments where it feels appropriate to do a promotion and run those promotions. You may find also that you want to adjust your pricing at some point, and that's totally fine. You can do that whenever you want. If you decide, maybe I priced it a little high. It might be from feedback that you get from other people or anything else. It doesn't matter. The point is you have control. And so then the one other thing I just want to mention, it's sort of a side note in one way to the pricing strategies specifically, but the fact that you are able to reach out to your community, your customers, for the customers who have purchased through Amplify audiobooks, the fact that you can reach out to those customers who have purchased through Amplify audiobooks means that you're able to communicate with them, to ask them to write you a review on Amplify audiobooks that you can also use on your website and in social media. And you can share those testimonials as well, review quotes in your email news. Right? There's so many ways that you can use that information. Unlike Amazon, where they claim ownership of whatever a reviewer writes on their website, on Amplify audiobooks, we want you to succeed. And so using those quotes in a variety of places, that's great for you. We think that's great for us too then. So, because we want you to succeed. That's the way we all win. And then the other thing is when you're reaching out to those who have purchased through Amplify audiobooks, you might ask if they know anyone else that might be interested in learning about it, and would they be willing to let their friends and followers know. So there are a lot of things that you can do when you are a part of the Amplify audiobooks platform, and I hope that this information about pricing strategies is helpful. If you have any questions about Amplify audiobooks or production of your audiobooks or marketing your audiobooks and yourself as an author, please reach out to us at proaudiovoices.com. We'd love to talk with you. Have a great day, and I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.